Supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner. I hope you are well, having a lovely week. As you all know, this podcast is designed to support you in your dog parenting journey, all aspects of living with dog, training dog, families and dogs, anything you can think of, we will talk about. So today we're going to talk about, I would say it's the first thing people teach their dog. And we're just going to have a little natter about why it may not be the most important thing, where it can be useful, how we use it, and how to get the most reliable. We're looking at sitting. Sit. Teach your dog to sit. Now, hands up if sit was the first thing you taught your dog, even if you didn't think about it or intend it. You probably didn't make a conscious choice, but sit tends to be the first thing we teach a dog. And many people will say to me when they start puppy class, oh yeah, I've already taught them how to sit, which is fine. So let's look at sit. What is sit? Obviously, sitting is putting your bum on the floor. My question is always, why? What is the purpose of a sit? Now, I'm not going to lie. Most people who will have ever done any general training with me will know I put the least amount of effort into sit because I think it's the least important thing we can teach a dog. It can be important, don't get me wrong, it's good to have, but it's not the be all and end all. And a lot of people start with sit and there's so much more than sitting. So what is sit? Sit is sit there. I've asked you to sit, stay sitting. When do we use it? So majority of people, I believe, this is my opinion, you're very welcome to disagree with me, and you're very welcome to sort of counteract it with a different argument. I'm very happy for that to happen. This is my opinion. You know, that my thought is I like to challenge people's thoughts and think about, why do you actually teach something? What's the purpose of it? And is there actually a better alternative? I believe there is. So that's obviously the argument I'm going to take. But I'm very, very, very happy for people to contradict me. So, and have a difference of opinion. That is normal. That is life. And again, if you've ever been in training classes with me, you'll know I often say there are two ways to do this. You can do it this way. You can do it that way. I prefer this way because of that, but it's up to you. I say this word, you say whatever word you like. I would do it this way, but if that doesn't work for you, we'll look at it doing it a different way. So yes, this is my opinion, but I am not closed in my opinion. I will happily take on board your thoughts and your points and adapt to what you need if you ever work with us. So why do people teach a sit? Most common reasons I hear are to help me have control over my dog. So I sit because I need control. People ask dogs to sit when they're overexcited, especially puppies. When puppies are like getting all excited, people ask them to sit. Sit before the dinner bowl. So you sit when doors open. Sit when we're crossing the road. Sit to have a treat. You have to sit. Sitting for everything, basically. And my argument is always, is there a better alternative in those situations? And majority of the time there is. So for example, why does your dog have to sit for dinner? You know, now I'm not gonna lie, when I had one dog and I had one puppy, I made him sit for his dinner. By the wayside now, I don't make my puppies sit for dinner. I don't make my dogs sit for their dinner. I ask them to wait patiently, but I don't ask them to wait patiently, if that makes sense. I wait for them to be patient. And generally they know patience gets me my food. So they all will just hang around in the kitchen. They don't jump up. They don't do anything. I don't ask for anything, but they are quite calm and relaxed. Dinner gets placed in front of you. Do you have to ask them to sit before the dinner goes down? No. You can just reward calmness. I think the sit is often there because it's a physical thing that someone can ask and it looks obvious. But sometimes rewarding just calmness is okay. Sitting before a front door. Yeah, I get the point. Yeah, that's a good place to use it. But again, do they have to sit? Can they just be waiting patiently? So I like to play devil's advocate, have you noticed? Sitting before a road. Again, huge safety factor. Yeah, absolutely. Ask your dog to sit when you approach a curb. So that the idea being they don't pull out in the road. If they were ever to get loose off the lead, they would get to a curb and sit down. In reality, do you think the dog's going to do that? Probably not. I don't know. I've not been in that situation, but I doubt they would. They'd probably just be like, well, hey, I'm off. I don't think that they would choose to sit. I don't know. They might do. But again, that's a really good way to use it. But does calmness happen instead? So like one of my dogs isn't a sitter. He doesn't, not that he doesn't enjoy sitting, but it's just, he doesn't see the point of it in that situation. He never has been keen on sitting. Maybe I've just never encouraged it. Who knows? So I work on wait. When we approach a road, you wait. You just stand still. Wait at the curb. You don't have to sit down. There's an alternative. You can do sit. You don't have to. So I'm not saying that sitting is wrong in these situations. I'm just saying that there is an alternative. So when else do we say people sit? So people ask them to sit when they are excited as puppies. Now, this is one that I do disagree with completely. If your puppy's really excited, inside the house, outside the house, zooming in, asking them to sit is trying to control their excitement. But what we end up doing is actually building excitement. I see it then as like a bit of a jack in the box or a coiled spring. They're like, oh my God, I've got so much emotion. Sit still, sit still, sit still. And then they're like ready to release. People always would ask Dave to sit when he was younger. And I'm like, no. Don't ask him to sit to fuss, because then as soon as you go to fuss him, he's going to jump up and buff you on the nose. Just because he'll jump up for a fuss. So it's like, just ask him to stand and then he won't. Don't ask him for anything. If he's happy standing, he won't then jump. So yes, I get the logic. Sitting is still, but we're not meeting the need of why they're overexcited. We are trying to train a behaviour rather than looking at emotions. And we know hand in hand, emotions and training go together. If your dog's emotions aren't in the right place or state of mind, training won't work. And if we train when they're calm and relaxed, often the emotions then sort of counteract everything. So again, I would personally look at emotions in those situations over a sit. So you're really, really excited. Why is that? How can I help you manage that emotion? Because then if I'm not here to ask you to sit, or I forget to ask you to sit, you know how to manage this yourself. You don't need me to interrupt. Same as like meeting people or people out on a walk and the dog's getting excited. If you ask them to sit, great. But what happens if you don't notice the person coming up and you haven't asked them to sit in time? You're always relying on you telling them how to behave rather than them just knowing, I can be quite calm and relaxed around other people. So personally in that situation, I would work on calmness around people and approaching people rather than I'm telling you how to behave. Does that make sense? Again, people do it a lot with reactive dogs. You must sit here while this dog walks past us. Sit and look at me, sit and look at me. Again, it's a very, very coiled spring action. And we're basically teaching a sit, stay with a distraction rather than emotion around other dogs. And then again, our dogs are relying on us to tell them how to behave rather than them relying on their own sort of thought processes. And personally, my style of training is all about rewarding or creating situations where our dogs can make the right choices so that when they're faced with those situations in real life, they know how to think for themselves and work independently. It's not reliant on us telling them and us always being one step ahead. Because obviously we can't always be one step ahead. We're not that good at foreseeing every situation. So there's a few sort of common issues of sort of areas that I see people ask for a sit in. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong, honestly. I'm just saying, is there a better alternative? Can you put a different spin on it so that we're not focusing on a sit rather than we're looking at a behaviour? So why do I teach sit and what situation do I use sit for? Personally, I look at sit for safety. So that sounds a bit odd, but what does that mean? Sit for safety basically means I ask you to sit because I need it to work, or it's part of a training drill that you are going to succeed. It's a trained behaviour rather than a way to control. And therefore, because I train it when I don't need it, build up the strength in the sit, when I do need it, it works. So sit for safety for me is, if I need you to be still to avoid you being injured, I want my sit to work. So, for example, and this is another example I often use because I used to do it quite a lot and I actually realised I don't do it as much. There was a period of time when I was forever breaking stuff in the kitchen. don't know what it was, but like, I always be dropping plates or dropping something, or maybe it was when the kids were younger and I don't know, life was just a bit more hectic and they'd knock stuff off a bit more. I don't know. But we'd always be smashing something or dropping something, and it would break. And therefore, obviously, you've got little shards of glass, or if you've dropped a glass, you've got shards of glass all over the place, or you've got bits of ceramic plate. You don't want your dog walking around over them, potentially getting them stuck in their feet. So sit. We've only ever worked on you sit and you stay sitting no matter what. It's not a way to control behaviour, it's a trained action. Therefore, they will stay sitting until I finish tidying up. Sit for safety could be you're out and about, off lead, there's a danger, tractor going past, people on quad bike, I don't know, sit. Stay sitting, I need you to stay sitting there. Now, because we train it for success, it means it's 110% reliable. I often use sitting in sort of a training pattern of toys, of access to like do gun dog games. Sitting has value rather than being a punishment almost. You think about it in terms of like excitement around being excited, people, dogs, those situations. Every time you see something really, really fun, sit. Sit then becomes quite, say, almost a negative, because it's like, oh, I was really excited, I've got to sit here and hold it in. So it becomes a negative, and then obviously negatives are more likely to be broken. Another time I actually see people ask their dogs to sit is when they're standing and waiting. So say they're sort of standing and chatting to somebody or hanging around in class, the dog has to sit next to them. Why? Why did your dog have to sit while you're talking to someone or while you're waiting? Why can't they stand up and wait patiently? Surely in that situation, being calm and relaxed and just waiting, no matter how you want to wait, is more important. You know, like if you were stood outside the shop, some people would stand up, some people lean against the wall, some people would sit on a bench. Does it matter which one you do? No, because they're all waiting patiently. So why does it matter for our dogs? Anyway, so let's continue with the conversation rather than go back. It's just a thought that popped into my head. So for me, I say sit isn't, we tend to use it in far too many situations and we don't look at the actual main purpose of it. So I talk about sitting for safety, or sitting for a purpose, because I want it to work. So what we look at with anything in training is, first of all, teaching our dog to do it. And obviously, yeah, I'm sure you guys know how to teach your dog to sit. I mean, I'm not going to go over that. But then it's, can you do it without the treat in hand? Because most people start with a food lure, of having a treat by their nose and lifting the dog's nose up without realising you put a little hand gesture on it. Everyone does. Everyone's is different. Most people like do a hand up, or some people do a point. You know, everyone's different, but there is a hand gesture involved, and you tend to have a treat in your hand. Dogs very quickly learn, to get that, I need to sit. So that's what they do. But then the challenge becomes, can you sit even if I haven't shown you a treat or encouraged you? So the next step is, can I ask you to sit and you know the cue and the instruction, rather than doing it because you know there's a treat in my hand, and then you get the treat afterwards. So phasing it, we call it phasing out the lure. So phasing out the food lure. Can you do it because I've asked with either a word or a hand gesture, and that then gets rewarded? The reward is a consequence rather than encouragement. So there's a very, very slight difference. People often say it's bribery. It's not. When you're teaching a behaviour, whether it be sit or something else, you use a food law as encouragement and incentive to show them what you'd like them to do. It's not a bribe. Then once they understand, you combine it with the cues, and then you would phase out that food law to say, you know what it means, now do it. When you do it, the consequence is the treat. So it's just a very slight shift in timing that makes all the difference. Once we can get them to sit without a food lure, then we can start working on the tricky bits. So what we first of all introduce is what we call the 3Ds. The 3Ds of dog training. Distance, distraction, duration. So basically, how long can you do something for? How far away can I be when I ask you to do it? Or how far away can I move when you're doing it? For distance, so that sounds a bit weird. And then distraction is, can you do it when you're distracted? And obviously each one of those has a different element. But again, think of success. And we're talking about sit here purely because I think sit's overused, but it applies to everything. Everything you want to teach your dog, these 3Ds, absolutely everything. And you know, even most things you teach them, you know, why do you actually need it? What is the purpose? And could you teach something else? Is there emotions at play? And obviously sitting, the reliable part is the important bit. So What a lot of people do is ask their dog to sit, they get up and then they feed them. Great, but you've actually just rewarded your dog for getting back up again. So think of when you're training a sit, you want your dog to stay in the position and be rewarded in the position. So for example, when you ask them to sit and you want to start working on duration, so how long can you do it for? Naturally with little tiny puppies, 2 or 3 seconds, but as they get a bit older, it might be longer. Our aim is to mark a behaviour, so say our marker word, good, yes, click, and give them the treat before they get up. Because what often happens, I find, is that dogs sit, people wait and they wait and they wait and they start testing it and going, they can wait a bit longer. Then dog gets up and they go, oh, well done. So dog learns it's okay to break the behaviour and they'll still get a treat. The aim is you ask them to sit, you wait for the period of time you think they're going to be able to do it for, but your aim is any sort of twitching, any movement, you go, right, well done. You get your treat while you're still sitting. So you say that marker word and reward them in situ. Then when it comes to the distance, we're getting away from them. We try and push it. People, it's human nature. We try and push dogs on and expect, we go, just a bit more, a bit longer. Or let's do one more step. Rather than saying, you've done this, it's amazing, I'm going to get back to you. Think success builds success. If you're asking your dog to sit and you walk away from them and you get back to them, mark them and reward them while they're still sitting, they learn sitting means good stuff. No matter where a human moves off to, they come back, they reward me for being here. It's the position that is being fed, not anything else. If you ask them to sit, you walk away and they get back up again and they come towards you and you go, oh, well done for sitting for that period of time. They learn that, again, it's the getting up that gets me fed. If a lot of people, one of the big mistakes I see with people teaching a sit is that they ask their dog to sit, they walk 10 paces away and then they recall them. Great, lovely. You've effectively, you think you're working on your sit, stay, and you think you're working on recall, but what you're effectively doing is creating a pattern. You sit, I'll walk away. You can leave, you can preempt that and get up when you're ready and come to me and I'll reward you. So your dog learns that it's okay to preempt the fact that you're going to call them in a minute, and they start to break their sit a little bit earlier each time. Because they go, well, yeah, I know you're going to call me, so I'll just come anyway. And you go, oh, well, I was going to call them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So effectively, then we weaken our sit. We think we're training a recall because we've created a distance and we're saying the recall word and they come towards us. But in what situation, when you want your recall to work, will your dog be sitting and staring at you? Never. When you're out on a walk, your dog's going to be wandering, mooching, sniffing. So that's when you want to practice your recall, because one, it's not real life training recall situation scenario, but it also weakens your sit. And obviously we want our sit to be as strong as possible because we want it to work. If I ask you to sit, I want you to stay there regardless. Now, we've then got what we call the distractions. Now, distractions are anything, absolutely anything that your dog could find distracting. So it could be people, it could be movement, it could be sounds. Again, we don't want to put them in the busiest environment possible and hope it works. We want to build up the success and build up short, sharp bursts of, oh, look, you were sitting and I did some funny things. Can you stay sitting? Well done. Practice in an environment where there's another dog nearby, but not like right on top of you, not running around like a nutter. Small successes building up. And we work on one D at a time and then combine them, but always creating success. And this is what creates a strong sit. This is like us getting back to them and rewarding them. You've also got releasing. There's 2 other ways to kind of release them from a sit almost, or to end the sit, end a behaviour. One is to ask them to do something else, which is fine. But again, I would use it minimally. That's a good word, minimally. Because if we're always asking them to sit and then saying, go and do that, a bit like the recall, they're going to learn to preempt it. So a lot of people will ask them to sit and then throw a ball and say, go get it. Great. But if we always do that, we become quite habit driven and quite repetitive. Our dog knows the routine. So we could ask our dog to sit, throw the toy, go back to them, reward them and go, well done. I'm going to go and pick that toy up now. Stay sitting. You don't always get it. I don't always ask you that. A lot of the time I come back to you and reward you. 1 out of 10, I'll go and let you do something else. But the anticipation, I find, is the most important factor. So Rem, I often talk about Rem because he's just the easiest to train. I know I talk about him being the hardest dog I've had, or the one who's taught me the most, but he's also the most fun dog to train. And because he's so like tenacious, he's like, come on, let's do it. I want to learn everything. He's amazing. Love him. We work a lot on the anticipation because he loves to hunt, he loves to retrieve, he loves to do all gun doggy stuff because he's a gun dog breed and he's from working lines. So yeah, that's what he does. So for him, the biggest reward for his sit is to get something. So if I ask him to sit, he now actually, if you've looked at our reels, there's a video, I think it was a reel years ago of him sitting, and basically I ask him to sit and his tail goes like 1 o'clock. So sitting for him is like really exciting. He's like, oh, we're going to do something. Because we've taught him that sitting means you get to go and do stuff. So you sit, you get released to go and do fun things. So like hunting, retrieving, etc. But we've also done a lot of you sit, I'm going to reward you. I'm going to throw something. I'm going to reward you. We're going to walk away from it. You don't always get, I'm going to go and pick it up and put it back in my pocket. But often one of the easiest ways to teach a really strong recall is indeed with anticipation. So not recall, sit, sorry. So if you ask them to sit, hold on to their collar, throw a treat in front of them, and they learn staying, sitting gets me to go and get that, and you add in a release cue, you're building more and more value in the sit. Rather than the sit being really boring, sit becomes an anticipatory behavior of, if I do this, I get what I want. And again, it builds value in your sit. So I will stay sitting because I know if I get up, I'm not going to get the fun. So sitting can be really, really good. Now, often I find it's the thing that people rush the most and push on too much. So again, I talk about Rem, but Rem's got the best sit stay out of all my dogs. He will sit while I wander off because he thinks I'm hiding a tennis ball and he's like, okay, I'll stay sitting here because I want to go find it. So he will sit and I can wander off for a good few minutes, all different directions, and he'll just stay and wait because of the anticipation. Now, when he was a puppy, we couldn't do sit stays because of his attachment, anxiety, etc. He needs to be with me. So if I attempt to take a step away, he'd be like, no, I'm coming with you. So those foundations is the most important bit. And think small steps to success, always, with everything. I know we're talking about sit in particular, but small steps to success. Better for you to succeed with 1 step repetitively for months, 2 steps repetitively for another few months, and to build up that solid foundation of, I get back to you, you get good stuff, don't break your sit. And spend months and months and months doing that rather than trying to run before you can walk and rush it. So think foundations, success, and building on those rather than trying to do too much too soon. The more, it's the same with everything, the hare and the tortoise type thing. The slower you go, the more you focus on those foundation skills, the better it's going to be in the long run. So yeah, today's episode, it's a bit training advicey, which we don't do very often on the podcast. But I think it's an important topic because it's something that keeps coming up in classes recently. So I thought I'd talk about sitting. But always ask yourself, why am I teaching a sit? What's the purpose of my sit? Can I teach my dog something different? Or can I work on something different and reward a state of mind and an emotion rather than a behaviour? And then focus on getting the strongest sit you possibly can so that it is reliable for your dog's future. Hopefully you found this episode useful. And if you do want training advice, make sure you sign up for our Paw Academy information. There was a bit of a hiatus. I was planning to get it all ready for last year, and last year went a bit tits up. So this year, 2025, Paw Academy, our online training hub portal, will be launched in the next couple of months. So if you do want to hear about that, sign up for information. I'll put the link in the podcast description, and that's where all the training advice will be available to you. Have a lovely week, and I'll catch up with you really soon. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.